We are nearing President Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, and while his return has clearly transformed America's political landscape, a wide range of big-ticket items are still looming. For more on the start of Trump's second term as president and what's to come, let's welcome in Matthew Aks, Evercore ISI senior strategist based there in D.C., has formerly worked in government as well, so we really appreciate your perspective here, Matt. So before all these other big ticket items, it seems like we should talk about tariffs and just linger on this one for a moment, because it is the thing that he has come out with a bang and then some. What do market participants now most closely need to watch from a policy perspective around tariffs in the coming weeks and months?
It's great to be with you. Well, look, I think tariffs clearly have peaked. And the administration is looking for a way to come down off of those highs you saw after the so-called Liberation Day. I think the question is just how quickly they can effectuate that without feeling like they've lost face. We know that the administration is working on memorandums of understanding, or Secretary Besson called them agreements of understanding, with a set of countries. But I think market participants really need to watch how substantive are those agreements, just how much breathing room do they buy for negotiations to unfold. And if they don't buy enough time or create enough certainty, then unfortunately, I think this environment we've been operating in of high uncertainty is likely to continue.
So, Matt, tariffs front and center for investors. So are taxes. I'm curious, Matt, those Trump tax cuts, in your opinion, Matt, are they getting extended? And if so, when you're talking to your clients, what do you think the timeline is?
Yeah, well, look, I think on the timeline, we're going to get a very important update here from Secretary Besson in a few days, potentially a few weeks, around when he expects to hit the debt limit. We know that the debt limit is riding along with the tax cut extensions, and I think that'll really frame up the legislative calendar here, looking ahead into May and into the summer. I expect that they're going to try to pass Trump's, so-called one big beautiful bill by around that time when they would hit the debt limit, and just try to deal with everything at once, extend the tax cuts, provide additional tax cuts, and also deal with the debt limit in kind of one full sweep.
The backdrop for this, of course, is that sentiment around Trump's performance has been worsening, particularly with regard to the economy. It was there that we saw quite a dramatic pullback in approval ratings. And so what does that mean for, I guess, both the president's ability, but also the pressure on him to make that bill happen?
Yeah, well, look, I think one of the most interesting aspects of this first 100 days has been that the president seems far less focused on near-term market and economic performance than I think we saw in his first term, and the sort of Trump we all got to know back when he was first serving. I do think that to the extent the economy continues to weaken due to the tariffs and the trade-related policy uncertainty, I think Congress, I don't know that they're going to directly check the president on tariffs or try to vote to overturn any of the Trump tariffs. I think what it just leads them to do is to really try to amp up that tax cut and try to, as best they can, to kind of offset some of the drag we're seeing from trade through the tax channel.
On Congress, Matt, I'm curious, what is GOP support like right now on Capitol Hill for Trump? How firm, how strong is it, Matt? Do you have line of sight there?
Yeah, well, look, I think the GOP under Trump in Congress right now, it's important to think of it. Trump is very powerful, has a great hold over his party, but there still are different factions, different coalitions that make up that Republican tent. I think for now, most folks don't quite want to get into a head-to-head confrontation with Trump, recognizing that he won the election, he won a full sweep in Congress, and has a mandate for some period of time here to try to carry out the full scope of his agenda in terms of what he promised to do. So I don't think you'll see anyone really taking him on directly. But I do think frustration and concern will continue to build, especially in a few weeks if we start to see some of the negative impacts of tariffs that some economists have started to warn about.
And sorry, to come back to the tax bill, whether we're talking about, I think it's going to be really important for markets whether you just get an extension or whether you get an extension plus. And so what's the sort of the base case for whether the plus, the other things on the agenda that Trump and the GOP have pushed for, whether those things are coming?
Yeah, look, I think they will get a decent sized plus on top of what most expect, which is just the extensions. The Senate framework creates a good chunk of room to do that. It does seem like the House is sort of coming to terms with adopting the Senate framework, which will lead to more tax relief. But I think there's a big question of just how much do they try to jam into that framework. There are different ways of structuring it. You could do more or less of that. And I think to some degree, members will be watching the deficit, will be watching the bond markets as well. And I think they'll try to find that sweet spot where they're providing the right amount of relief for the economy and to try to maintain some of that support, while at the same time not going so far that you provoke an adverse reaction from the bond markets.
Matt, I get you out of this. What did you just make of Trump seeming to kind of flirt with the idea of raising taxes on millionaires? When you heard that, Matt, your response, your reaction?
Well, I think it's certainly a signal of just how far the Republican Party has evolved. I remember back, I was serving in government during 2012 when we had the fiscal cliff then. And in a lot of ways, the fiscal cliff then basically focused on that exact question. And I think the Republican side was adamant that they did not want to see taxes go up on top earners. And that was really what much of the debate back then focused on. So I think it's indicative of a new populist shift in the Republican Party, which is animating not just tax policy, but a whole host of areas. It does seem like Trump has now backed off that idea. But I do think, again, as they continue to develop the bill, especially if it's looking like they're going to go down the road of having some Medicaid cuts, they'll be looking for other ways to show that they're still aligned with working class voters.
Matt, great to see you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.